Hey, how's it going? I'm IlaGolden and welcome to Ila Reads.
Doing as she was told, Echoe started her story from the first moment she'd been aware of Mika, that moment in her teens when her last conversion therapy had failed and she was overcome with pain. From there, she talked about all the times she could remember feeling as though someone or something was watching over her. Then she talked about her children's imaginary friend, before finally winding up in the present and the events which had taken place over the last few weeks. All through her story, the librarian had watched her carefully, only interrupting to get more details from Echoe or to clarify something. Now that she had reached the end, however, she found herself in the middle of a long and awkward feeling silence. "How certain are you that your sister can't possibly be behind these incidents?" The librarian finally spoke. "Honestly, I think she might have been the one to push my chair over when we were rehearsing that scene together, but other than that..." "You don't think any of these other incidents were to do with her?" "No. No, I think if she were the one to push my chair over, it might have been some kind of warning not to upstage her or whatever, but I don't think she'd go further than that. I think she genuinely wants to change, and maybe she thinks working with me will help her get there, even if she's not exactly thrilled about it." "Did she tell you that herself?" "Not in so many words. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading between the lines a little, hearing what I want to from her. But I don't think she'd honestly try to seriously injure me, let alone lock me in a fire like that. Besides, like I said, she's no match for me telekinetically." "The police seem to think she had something to do with it." The librarian folded her arms. "Yes, but at least one of the officers seems to have it in for her." Echo found herself almost rolling her eyes. "And if anyone else felt the same as him, or even if he's the only one, I don't know. I get the feeling the evidence might have been tampered with somehow. What really strikes me about the whole thing is that they've only arrested my sister. I've told them multiple times just how strong my telekinetic abilities are. If Sunny is involved, she can't be in it alone." "You know that for sure, do you?" "I haven't tested myself against her recently. No." She averted her gaze. "But Sunny is a natural telepath with limited telekinesis. I'm a natural telekinetic with limited precog. You see the problem here, don't you?" "Your sister's abilities are unlikely to develop beyond yours." The librarian nodded thoughtfully. "I'm not saying it can be ruled out completely, but I can see why you're inclined to think otherwise. I also don't want to think badly of Mika, but..." She pressed her lips together. "I take it your research into the Mano when you were a bouncer taught you a lot about them." "Yes, it did, and I don't want to influence your opinion here at all, but most Mano are capable of projecting their own powers through other people." "What does that mean exactly?" Echo frowned. "It means they're capable of masking their own energy signature through using other people. It's Mano's strength, power and control being used, but to any kind of sensory ability or device, it would appear to be someone else." She could feel her heart fall in disappointment. Somehow she hoped to exonerate Mika. "As I said, according to my research, this ability is fairly common amongst the Mano-sen." She tilted her head thoughtfully. "But they're not the only ones with it. We are, after all, their sons and daughters." "You mean the enchanted breeds are also capable of it?" "Some breeds more so than others." She nodded. "For us it's a rare ability and not one often nurtured, because most of us who have it don't even know they have it." "Are there any breeds which are more likely to have it than others?" Echo jumped on her words. "I think there are, but I couldn't tell you which ones specifically off the top of my head. So, unfortunately, we can't rule your friend in or out at this point." "That's okay," she sighed. "I just wish I knew which breeds were more likely to have it, then maybe I could create a possible list of suspects, because right now... Tell you what, like all ex-balancers, I'm still able to use my codes and access for information gathering. Even when we're retired, we're still supposed to keep an eye on things and report anything which might need further investigation or whatever. I will use my access to find out what breeds you might want to keep an eye on. I might even be able to find out if anyone's been knowingly registered with that particular power, because we're required to register all known powers to our nearest balancer so they can keep an eye on us." Echo knew who she was talking to, but still couldn't help but roll her eyes at the nanny's state. I know, I was never overly comfortable with that either. But it really is for the protection of society, you know, and I don't just mean ours. Yeah, sure, yes, I'm sure it is, but... No one said you had to like it." She half smirked. "It'll probably take me a few days to get the information I need, so I want you to take this number and give me a call sometime next week." She handed her a card. "As for the Great Butterfly..." "The Great Butterfly?" Echo frowned as she took the card off of her. "The Great Butterfly of Libra was the code name before I retired. The number I've given you is for the research department. I'm probably going to be in when you call. They'll patch you through to the balance issue phone they'll assign me when I arrive. I used to have my own personal one, but, well, retired. Of course. Oh, and I advise you don't give out your real name when you call. The lines are secure, but the research departments are full of some of the biggest busybodies you'll ever meet. And trust me, if there's even a flake of dirt to find about you, they will find it. That's okay. I'll just tell them my name is Sweetbat or something, Echo half laughed. Sweetbat, I like it. Some kind of pet name? Oh, never mind. She held a hand up before Echo could answer. It's best I don't know either. I wouldn't want to inadvertently land you in anything. Okay, well I should go now. I need to pick my kids up from school. Of course. I'll speak to you soon, Sweetbat. I'll be looking forward to it, Great Butterfly, she half laughed, as she made her way out of the room. Once outside, a part of her wondered if the books the librarian had picked out had any useful information in them, or if she just picked them out at random as some kind of cover. She almost wanted to believe it had been some kind of cover because she struck Echo very much as being the espionage type. Her mind almost laughed at the phrase, but even as she went to do so, she realised there was probably more than a seed of truth in the thought. Either way, she'd been given a lot to think about. I really hope this has nothing to do with you, Mika, she murmured to herself as she hit the cool, crisp air of the outside world. I don't want this to have anything to do with you. She hadn't realised how much she meant those words until she spoke them. It was like her heart had connected to this man she barely knew on a level beyond her control. She didn't know yet if that was a good thing or not, but she did know she wanted the opportunity to find out. She wanted the opportunity to get to know Mika, but she couldn't do that with all these doubts swirling around him. Please don't be the bad guy, Mika. She closed her eyes for a brief moment of prayer. I'm not sure I could take it. She was once again almost at the school gates when she spotted Cleo. There was something about the way she was standing which suggested she was waiting for her to arrive. Several emotions ran through Echo, ranging from annoyance to guilt. By the time she actually reached the woman, she'd managed to whittle down what she was feeling to an almost neutral state. So, you met Elsa Rosemary? Cleo's voice was calm but tense as she made away with all pleasantries and launched straight into the conversation. Honestly, Cleo, I had no idea. Echo could hear the apologetic tones in her own voice. That's funny, because Near swears he mentioned it to you. He did? She frowned. Apparently something about telling you about me after we'd first met? Wait, you mean you were that friend he made? She gave a strange-sounding laugh. Well, I guess it makes sense now, in hindsight, but honestly, I never put the two things together. When I met you, Well, you didn't exactly strike me as the orphan type. And what exactly does someone who is an orphan type look like exactly? I'm sorry. You're right. I was being closed-minded and judgmental. I'm sorry for anything I've said to you in the past which might have been insensitive, and I promise not to make a big deal out of your past in the future. From the way Elsa Rosemary talks about you, I'd say you found yourself a family, and anyone who has that, in whatever form it takes, doesn't deserve to be pitied. Thanks. A small smile flashed on her face for a moment. I'm not ashamed of my past or where I've come from, but the idea of people judging me for it. I understand all about being judged, believe me. Echo held her hands up. There aren't many of us who don't do something about their disability. Personally, I think that's kind of a shame. There's nothing wrong with being different in whatever form that takes. Is that why you won't do anything about Scint's wings? She studied her for a moment. Or get him tested? His wings are a part of him, and in a few years when he's old enough to understand the situation, I'll ask him what he wants to do about them. I've looked into it. As long as he's under the age of 20, there's still a good chance they could straighten them. But that should be his choice, because there's nothing worse than being young and confused and in pain. It didn't matter how many kisses and cuddles and boxes of chocolates my parents gave me through the worst of it. There were still times I felt as though they were punishing me. Of course, as an adult, I know they weren't, but I don't want Scint to have those kind of memories of me. As for the testing, he's not old enough yet. We were told to wait until he's at least 6 or 7 because some children just naturally develop a little slower than others, and, well, you know. As an Elsa, Rosemary never had any choice about these kind of things. Cleo half turned away. So I always thought it was normal to try and get things fixed or be tested for whatever as young as possible. So when I met you and saw Scint, I didn't really understand what had gone wrong. I mean, Near explained how things went wrong for you, which is fair enough, but I thought people had to get things sorted for their kids, whether they thought it was the right thing to do or not. But I guess the system just likes to pick on orphans. Not just orphans. I've had more than my fair share of doctors trying to tell me how much more successful treatment on his wings would be if we started sooner rather than later. but my own research said otherwise, especially when it came to the more delicate dragonfly style of wings. Starting early with them is likely to cause more damage, not less. But doctors always think they know best when they talk about these things. I guess I've never felt the need to question their authority. Cleo folded her arms over her stomach in a strange, almost thoughtful way. Most people don't, because most people only see the successes. But I'm not the only one out there who's experienced conversion therapy failure more than once. Some keep at it, feeling like the pain they get every however many months it works for them is worth it for a taste of normality. But more and more people are turning away from the treatment after their third or fourth failure. And you know this how? Cleo frowned. I used to be part of a support group for those who had trouble with conversion therapy. But after I decided to stop putting myself through that torture, I joined a few of the others who'd reached a similar conclusion, and we set up a group of our own to help those who find themselves in that position. I'm credited as one of the founding members, although I've never had that much control over the group, and I only drop in every now and then to see what's going on these days. I see. I didn't even know things like that existed. I thought you were a one-off. I am, in a sense, because I force people to deal with me as I am. Our society has always tried to do something to cure disability, which in previous generations meant a lot of people basically never leaving the hospital and being treated no better than lab rats. Anyone who didn't agree or conform to this way of thinking was considered selfish by the general public because they didn't know what it was really like. To a degree, they still don't, although there has been a growing awareness about the true history of disability in our society. I can understand it though. Cleo visibly squirmed. The idea that people should get themselves fixed. I mean, with the constant advancement of medical practices, it just seems like there will come a point where they'll be able to do anything. And there probably will. But that doesn't mean people should have to get themselves fixed if they don't want to. Would you subject yourself to who knows how much physical pain if it meant you could be considered normal? I know I have, and I know I wouldn't again, no matter how much guarantee there was that it would work this time. That's why it should be the choice of the individual and not something forced upon someone who isn't old enough or doesn't have the capacity to understand what's happening to them. What if it was life-threatening? Well, that's different, isn't it? If something needs to be done to save a person's life, it should be done regardless. But I'm not talking about life-threatening conditions here. I'm talking about things people would rather wish weren't there, partly because, for a long time, they weren't as far as the rest of our society is concerned. That's a big problem when you shut people away to experiment on them. Society can pretend they don't exist. All they hear about are these wonderful new treatments like conversion therapy, sometimes developed here, sometimes developed by the balancers, which can cure X, Y, and Z. They don't think about the pain and suffering people went through for us to reach that point. Yet, when these facilities started to close and scientists suggested maybe using animals to test these things on, the general public were up in arms. That's why society needs to be forced into accepting that disability is a thing, and not a bad thing, because else we're considered lower on the food chain than someone's pet. Cleo again looked as though she were about to say something, but hesitated. For a couple of long moments there was an awkward silence between them. I should go. School will be letting out soon. Echoe went to push her chair forward, but Cleo held up a hand to stop her. I know we've not exactly been friendly up until this point, but I think it's time we change that. She forced a smile onto her face. How about you drop the kids off at the clubhouse and we go for a coffee or something? You know, really talk, and I don't mean about all this hard and heavy stuff. I think we need to get to know each other, Echoe, and what better time than the present to start? Where is this coming from? Echoe narrowed her gaze on her for a moment. Who knows, she shrugged, but somehow today it just feels like the time to start. So, what do you say? Okay, Cleo Fireflower, you're on.
Enjoyed what you've heard so far? Please consider subscribing to find out when the next part's being released. Thanks for watching. See ya!